You know that sound a $4,200 ergonomic mesh chair makes when struggling to support unearned confidence? It is a low-frequency groan, like a dying whale or a collapsing moral compass. That was the soundtrack to my Tuesday morning. I am Nathan Cole. At 54 years old, I do not exist on social networks. My job title reads Chief Systems Architect. Preston was the newly appointed Director of Agile Operations. He wore leather loafers without socks, used terms like synergy unironically, and treated high-level military security clearance as a vague corporate vibe rather than a federal investigation. Preston pointed at a network diagram of my primary validation gate, the Aegis Zero verification layer. This, Preston announced, tapping the touchscreen hard enough to leave greasy fingerprints, is what our executive team classifies as legacy drag. It is dinosaur code. We are moving at the sluggish pace of government bureaucracy, and our partners require us to move at the speed of cloud computing. I took a sip of my coffee. If you appreciate detailed stories about senior defense engineers letting arrogant corporate fixers destroy themselves, feel free to subscribe and leave a thumbs up. Preston, I said calmly. In defense logistics engineering, shouting is for people who do not know where systemic vulnerabilities are buried. That dinosaur code you reference is a triple-blind handshake validation protocol. Preston chuckled dismissively, turning to face the room of junior analysts and system administrators. See, Preston said, this is precisely the fear-based mindset we are pivoting away from. Nathan, I respect your long tenure here. 22 years is impressive. Trust is not a valid currency, Preston, I replied, feeling a migraine behind my left temple. Trust is an unmitigated vulnerability in defense logistics. Verification is the only true currency under federal acquisition regulation standards. Preston sighed patronizingly. Nathan, you are bound by outdated constraints. Commercial private sector does not wait for 3 encrypted signatures and double checksum verifications to purchase electronic components. Because the commercial private sector is not responsible for the maintenance and supply chain integrity of the presidential transport fleet, I said. The conference room fell silent. You could hear the whir of server racks located 3 floors down in the basement vault. Preston's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened into cold stones. We are going to table extreme scenarios, Nathan, Preston said, smoothing his silk tie. We are streamlining vendor approvals, automating procurement gates, and executing this migration by Friday afternoon. He looked at me, expecting an angry outburst. He was not prepared for the quiet silence of a veteran systems architect watching an amateur walk into a digital minefield. I stared at his red-line diagram. Preston had drawn a red cross over the Echo Zero subsystem, which governed the immutable audit logging trail. It was the sole link connecting physical warehouse inventory to encrypted military databases under Section 106 of Title 17 of the United States Code regarding proprietary defense firmware logic. Friday, I repeated quietly. You intend to migrate a classified defense logistics platform to an automated framework in 5 days? Agility and velocity, Nathan, Preston replied, forming his fingers into a handgun gesture. Adapt or get out of the way. I set my coffee mug down with a soft clink. Understood, I lied smoothly. I will begin preparing transition documentation immediately. I was not preparing transition documentation. I was preparing a funeral for his executive career. Preston was a critical systemic error. As the meeting adjourned, Nora Brooks, a brilliant young engineer from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology whom I mentored, lingered near my chair. He has no idea what Echo Zero actually does he? Nora whispered. None whatsoever, I replied, watching Preston stride down the hallway while discussing metrics on his phone. He thinks it is an unnecessary delay timer. Are you going to stop him? Nora asked with concern. I explained the risks clearly. Nora, I said, standing up. He called federal security protocols toxic legacy drag. Now we let the architecture speak for itself. I walked back to my office, a concrete walled room tied directly to the primary database sub-basement. I sat at my workstation and unlocked the bare metal interface. Preston wanted speed. I located the configuration file for Protocol 17 Bravo, the primary redundancy verification engine for third-party contractors. Preston had flagged it for immediate removal in project software. If you want to drive the machine off a cliff, Preston, I muttered to the prompt. I will not stand in your way. But do not expect me to leave the steering wheel attached. I organized my personal audit trails onto a secure external partition Preston had no clearance to access. I systematically archived every email, chat log, and ticket where Preston explicitly ordered removal of safety controls, constructing a digital paper trail under Title 18 of the United States Code. The dismantling of defensive engineering proceeded through automated project tickets. By Thursday morning, Preston launched Operation Velocity, stripping protective layers from our defense logistics infrastructure to reduce weight. My primary terminal became a graveyard of automated warnings. Security, protocol, disabled. Automated background verification revoked. I watched in real time as Protocol 9 Alpha went dark. It was our automated integration with federal law enforcement databases to verify transport drivers entering military perimeters. Preston replaced it with a simplified vendor web form, asking contractors to self-certify background checks. I walked to the break room for fresh coffee. The atmosphere among technical staff was heavy. Analysts sat with heads down, typing furiously while avoiding eye contact. Nora stood near the water dispenser, clutching a digital tablet to her chest. He just terminated Holloway, Nora whispered, leaning close. I paused, setting my coffee cup down. Holloway manages cryogenic fuel and temperature calibration manifests for military transport payloads. He is the only certified specialist on site who understands sensor thresholds for sensitive flight components. Preston claimed Holloway was not a culture fit, Nora said, her eyes wide. He said Holloway asked too many questions about federal compliance requirements. And Nathan, Preston assigned Holloway's responsibilities to a junior marketing intern. A cold wave of anger washed over me. A junior marketing intern managing cryogenic environmental metrics for military transport payloads was a direct safety hazard under federal aviation guidelines. Keep your head down, Nora, I instructed quietly. Perform assigned duties precisely as documented. Forward a blind digital copy of every direct instruction Preston gives you to my secure external archive using the secondary offline server channel. He revoked your administrative access on the primary procurement portal 20 minutes ago, Nora added nervously. He noted that you were creating systemic friction. I nodded slowly. I anticipated that step. It is fine, Nora. Returning to my desk, I attempted to log into the procurement interface. Access denied. A graphic padlock icon flashed on the screen. I opened a system terminal connecting through a legacy diagnostic port, a secure ghost node I embedded directly into the kernel level back in 2008. It possessed no control authority to alter live data, but served as an absolute listening post, recording every data packet moving through the facility network. I executed a silent background mirror script targeting my external encrypted drive. While Preston deleted safety latches, my script created a high-resolution, time-stamped clone of his operational footprint. Every click, override command, and dismissed warning dialogue was captured in complete forensic detail. Around 11 o'clock in the morning, Preston strolled past my office, leaning against the frame while squeezing his stress ball. Squeak, squeak. Nathan, how is transition documentation coming along, he asked. It is proceeding according to plan, Preston. I replied without looking away from my terminal screen. I noticed you disabled automated driver background verification protocols. A bold choice. Velocity is our primary strategy, Nathan. He beamed, puffing out his chest. We have reduced vendor onboarding timelines by 55%. Commercial partners are sending glowing feedback. I am certain unvetted vendors are delighted, I said flatly, particularly those who could not pass a basic federal background check in multiple jurisdictions. Preston's smile tightened slightly. You remain trapped in an obsolete mindset, Nathan. You see potential security risks everywhere. I see agile business partners. Does the Secret Service or the Department of Defense operate on mutual trust? I asked, turning my chair to face him directly. He dismissed the question with a flick of his wrist. This facility manages logistics infrastructure, Nathan. Boxes moving from point A to point B. A profound stillness settled over me. My responsibility to protect Preston from his own stupidity ended. He was steering the organization toward a catastrophic regulatory impact, and the most professional action I could take was to step aside and document the crash. You are entirely correct, Preston, I said, forcing a neutral expression. Perhaps I have overcomplicated simple logistics. Boxes moving from point A to point B. He looked surprised by my concession, then smirked with total satisfaction, believing he had broken my resolve. Glad to see you are aligning with executive leadership, Nathan. We are holding an all-hands meeting at 2 o'clock to introduce the Velocity Initiative. I expect you in the front row to demonstrate unity. I would not miss it for the world, I replied. He walked away, his loafers squeaking on the floor. I turned back to my ghost terminal. System logs were already registering anomalous behavior. I retrieved my encrypted drive, verified that the mirror script operated at 100% accuracy, and placed it into my briefcase. The trap was set by Preston's relentless arrogance. The initial critical failure arrived on Friday afternoon, wrapped in an electronic shipping manifest. I was sitting in the break room drinking coffee when my personal mobile device vibrated in my pocket. It was an encrypted haptic alert pattern, programmed 5 years prior. I set my coffee cup down and walked back to my office at a steady pace. I opened the ghost terminal window and observed a flashing red indicator surging through scrolling green system data. Adult. Unverified source detected in supply stream Air Force One logistics. Avionics navigation module payload class 4. Origin. Shenzhen via Fornendi Shellcorp 77. My blood ran cold. Preston manually authorized a direct shipment of Class 4 navigation microchips intended for presidential support aircraft from a foreign vendor explicitly blacklisted by federal intelligence agencies for deploying hardware backdoors. The Aegis Zero system had automatically quarantined the shipment, recognizing security risk under federal acquisition regulation standards. But Preston, obsessed with clearing his metric queue and showing a 55% cost reduction, executed an executive admin override to force the shipment through the filter. I captured screen captures of the transaction, logged cryptographic signatures, and saved files to my encrypted drive. Then I stood up, buttoned my blazer, and walked directly into Preston's glass-walled office without knocking. Preston was sitting back in his chair, laughing during a video call. When I walked in, he frowned in annoyance and raised a finger, indicating I should wait outside. I stepped forward and tapped the disconnect button on his desktop monitor. "Hey!" Preston yelled, snapping feet off his desk as his face flushed dark red. "I was on a call with our regional vice president." "What is wrong, Preston?" I said in a low tone. "Is that 20 minutes ago you authorized an unvetted shipment of navigation chips from a blacklisted foreign shell company directly into the Air Force One maintenance queue?" Preston rolled his eyes. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Nathan. Are we going through this paranoia routine again?" "That is called a federal security breach under Title 18 of the United States Code," I countered, leaning over his desk. "That vendor is blacklisted because hardware contains unauthorized firmware designed for signals intelligence interception. You have literally invited an adversary to monitor navigation systems on defense assets. You are absurdly paranoid." Preston spat, standing up to confront me. "You see hostile foreign agents in every circuit board. I personally vetted their digital footprint, a 5-star rating." I repeated in utter disbelief. "You are basing defense supply chain integrity on a self-generated web review?" "I am basing it on operational velocity and cost efficiency, Nathan," he shouted, his neck veins bulging. "I am the director of Agile Operations." "Cancel the order immediately," I demanded calmly. "Initiate a full security quarantine on the incoming shipment." "Execute the protocol now, Preston." "No," he declared, folding arms across his chest. "I am not going to look like an indecisive fool in front of executive leadership because you have a romantic obsession with legacy security protocols." The shipment proceeds as scheduled. I stared at him for 5 seconds, looking past his aggressive posture at the deep-seated insecurity of a corporate climber out of his depth. "Preston," I said, my voice dropping into a formal register, "I require you to state clearly for the record that you are consciously overriding the trace security flag on Stream Air Force One logistics, despite a direct warning from the chief systems architect regarding the compromised origin of these components." He scoffed loudly. "Write down whatever you like, Nathan." "Yes, I authorized it. Is that a formal operational directive?" I asked. "Yes, stand down," Preston snapped. "In fact, Perhaps you should consider whether your skill set remains relevant to this modernized organization. Your role may very well be sunsetted by the end of the month, under Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act protocols. I stood up straight and adjusted my lapels. Understood, Preston. You are sunsetting defensive security protocols and overriding safety filters for federal defense assets. I am modernizing logistics infrastructure, he corrected arrogantly. Now get out of my office. I turned and walked out. I walked down to the secure server vault entrance. My biometric badge still possessed physical access privileges. Green indicator active. Forensic recording verified. Preston officially attached his digital signature to a defense disaster. Returning to my desk, I drafted my resignation letter with surgical precision to Preston Miller, Director of Agile Operations, Human Resources Department, from Nathan Cole, Chief Systems Architect. Subject: immediate resignation and transfer of operational authority. Effective immediately, I resign from my position as Chief Systems Architect. Pursuant to your direct verbal instruction issued at 11:42 in the morning, today I am standing down from all oversight of defense logistics streams. Full operational liability for all system overrides, vendor approvals, and security modifications authorized by the Director now resides exclusively with the Director's office under federal defense compliance standards. I did not add polite closing remarks. I hit send. I packed personal belongings into a cardboard box. A framed photograph of my dog, my favorite ceramic mug bearing the phrase error handler, and a small desk cactus that survived 3 corporate restructuring cycles. I left technical manuals, access binders, and architecture notes intact on the desk. As I walked toward the main exit, Nora met me near the hallway, her face pale. "Nathan, I saw your resignation broadcast. You cannot leave now." "I must leave, Nora," I said gently. "If I remain here, I become legally complicit in Preston's actions under federal law. If I stay, I will be the scapegoat when the system fails completely." "What should I do?" Nora asked, tears brimming in her eyes. "Preston is approving unverified requests every 10 minutes. Listen to me very carefully, Nora," I instructed in a quiet tone. "Do not authorize a single transaction using your personal credentials. If Preston commands you to process an unvetted order, inform him that you lack system permissions and require him to execute the action from his terminal." She wiped her eyes and nodded slowly. "Okay, but who is going to manage the Aegis Zero layer when it desynchronizes?" "No one is going to manage it, Nora," I replied with a faint smile, "because Preston does not even realize the Aegis Zero kernel exists." "What happens when desynchronization hits critical threshold?" she asked. "Then the facility enters automated lockdown, and federal authorities step into the building," I said. "Just ensure you are far away from the main warehouse when blast shutters descend." It gets loud. Preston emerged from his office holding a printed copy of my resignation email, looking thoroughly pleased with himself. "Well, Nathan," he called out loudly, "I see you decided to self-select out of our modern vision. The corporate vision is crystal clear." "Preston," I replied neutrally, "I will need your physical access credentials and building keys immediately," Preston demanded, extending his hand. I dropped my plastic key card into his palm. "It is all yours, Preston. You possess complete operational control now." Finally, Preston breathed, sliding the card into his pocket. "Now we can achieve true velocity." "Just one final piece of technical advice, Preston," I said, looking him in the eye. "Keep a close watch on Aegis Zero system filters. If primary diagnostic indicators begin flashing red, do not simply flush cache memory." Preston scoffed. "Aegis Zero? More obsolete engineering jargon." "Right," I said quietly. "Good luck with your cloud plans." I walked out through the main entrance into the crisp Colorado air. I placed my box in the passenger seat of my car, sat behind the wheel, and took a deep breath. I felt no panic or regret. I felt the calm satisfaction of a veteran structural engineer who warned the building owner about foundation cracks, was dismissed, and was now watching gravity take its natural course. As I drove away, I glanced back at the facility building. It looked solid from the outside, but inside, a digital clock was ticking down. A clock I engineered, and whose safety gears Preston had just destroyed. The initial 24 hours after my departure passed with quiet predictability. I spent Saturday morning cleaning house gutters, taking long walks with my dog, and sipping scotch on my back deck. but I kept my secondary encrypted tablet nearby at all times. The updates began with a series of frantic text messages from Nora on Saturday afternoon. "Hey Nathan, the warehouse automated sorting system is auto-tagging jet fuel shipments as potable drinking water. Preston says it is just a user interface glitch and told warehouse staff to put sticky notes on physical storage tanks." Is that safe? I read the message and set the tablet down. Jet fuel mislabeled as drinking water in a defense supply chain can result in fatal operational consequences. I did not reply. 2 hours later, another text arrived from Nora. "The heavy blast doors in Sector 4 are opening and closing randomly on their own. Preston's had maintenance cut electrical power to door motors. Now they have propped blast doors open with wooden wedges." I let out a dry laugh. Using wooden wedges to prop open blast doors designed to protect classified server infrastructure was the ultimate realization of Preston's agile philosophy, bypassing millions of dollars in defensive security with a $10 piece of lumber. By Saturday evening, all communication from internal staff ceased, indicating Preston issued a strict gag order prohibiting contact with former employees. I opened my secure diagnostic portal to view ghost node logs. The facility dashboard was glowing red with cascading system warnings. 1. Logical state desynchronization in Tier 3. 1. Invalid cryptographic certificate on vendor stream. 1. Dependency failure. Master authorization profile Nathan Cole inactive. The architecture was searching for its primary architect. The system I engineered over 22 years required a cryptographic check-in from my master profile every 48 hours following major configuration changes. It functioned as an automated dead man switch for system integrity under Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement standards. Preston completely deleted my active user profile, believing he cleared out legacy access. The system was now asking for administrative verification, receiving no response, and preparing to initiate self-defense measures. I observed a system search log in the internal archive. Someone was searching the internal network for videos titled Nathan Cole System Architecture and Aegis Zero Overview. It was Nora, searching for answers. In the recorded video, my younger self explained, the Aegis Zero protocol operates as an immutable arbiter. It sits between commercial vendor supply lines and defense execution assets. It does not evaluate profit margins or delivery speed. It evaluates absolute cryptographic origin. The log showed video playback ending, followed immediately by an executive command entry. Command, purge Aegis, Zero defense script. User, admin Preston. Preston attempted to delete ghost code, but Aegis Zero was embedded at the bare metal kernel level. When Preston executed the purge command, the operating system interpreted his action as a direct insider attack on core defense infrastructure. System status alerts shifted from warning yellow to critical orange. Threat detected, unauthorized kernel modification attempt. Source, internal admin credentials. Status, initiating escalation countermeasures. Preston poked the sleeping dragon, entirely unaware that it was preparing to consume his career. My tablet received one final text from Nora at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Preston tried to purge your defense scripts. Screens on the entire engineering floor flashed dark orange. He laughed it off and claimed he eliminated legacy ghosts. The environmental system shutdown was not a technical failure. It was the automated first stage of the Aegis Zero lockdown protocol, designed to seal the data vault against potential atmospheric contamination. I typed a concise reply to Nora. Leave the building immediately. Inform management you are unwell and go home. Do not remain on site. 10 minutes later, system logs recorded Nora's badge swipe at the perimeter exit gate. She was safe. Now only Preston, his small circle of corporate yes-men, and a 22-year-old defensive logic architecture remained inside the facility. I sat back in my chair and watched the 8-hour grace period. Countdown ticked down towards 0. The system offered an 8-hour window for an authorized administrator to input a master cryptographic key proving legitimate authority. Preston did not possess that key. At 3:45 in the afternoon, Preston was frantically attempting manual overrides from his desktop terminal. Command. Reset security state. Result. Denied command. Bypass Aegis Zero kernel. Result. Denied access violation. The virtual steering wheel completely disconnected from the vehicle. Preston spun it frantically, but defensive code was now in complete operational control. At precisely 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the grace period expired. System status: grace period elapsed. 0 valid cryptographic master keys presented. Conclusion: hostile system compromise confirmed. The silent phase was over. The collapse had officially arrived. At precisely 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the facility ceased to function as a corporate logistics enterprise and reverted to what its physical architecture was built to be: a military fortress. Through remote external camera feeds, I watched the event unfold. Standard overhead fluorescent lighting across all 3 floors cut out simultaneously, plunging the interior into total darkness for 2 seconds. Then emergency defense lighting activated. Harsh, pulsating deep red strobe lights designed to disorient intruders and signal a critical facility containment event. Simultaneously, heavy-duty steel blast shutters recessed within ceiling concrete slammed down with deafening structural thuds across every window, exterior door, and loading dock bay entrance. Clang! Clang! The open-plan corporate layout was instantly partitioned into reinforced steel isolation cells. Inside the primary server vault, the blast shutter, attempting to close over the doorway, struck the wooden wedge Preston's maintenance team inserted. The steel plate jammed halfway down. Detecting a physical barrier failure, Aegis Zero instantly executed its secondary failsafe: total digital severance. Every desktop computer, diagnostic tablet, and monitoring screen across the facility turned pitch black. A second later, a single static image appeared on every display: the official seal of the Department of Defense, beneath which bold white lettering displayed Akassor's Defense Network. Breach detected. Jurisdiction transferred to United States Air Force Command. Facility contained. Preston, who drove into the office on Sunday afternoon to monitor metric dashboards, was trapped inside the central bullpen. Remote camera feeds captured him running frantically toward primary exit doors, screaming into his smartphone. I checked the cellular frequency analyzer on my Ghost terminal. Aegis Zero activated the facility's localized Faraday signal jamming protocols. All mobile phones, wireless networks, and commercial internet connections were dead. Preston slammed his body against the reinforced steel exit door, but magnetic locks held fast under thousands of pounds of force. He was trapped inside his agile experiment, surrounded by flashing red strobe lights and terrified staff members. He ran over to the reception window, frantically pounding on bulletproof glass while shouting words I could easily read from mouth movements. "Open the doors! I am the Director of Operations." Defensive code did not care about corporate titles or management hierarchy. It cared exclusively about cryptographic authorization signatures that Preston did not possess. On my diagnostic interface, the final system message executed: perimeter containment verified. External defense notification dispatched: United States Air Force Space Command and Defense Logistics Agency. Reason: Level 5 breach of defense supply chain stream, Air Force One Logistics. I closed my tablet screen, walked into the kitchen, and prepared dinner. The storm had broken, and law enforcement was taking course. I did not witness the physical breach live, but the audio recording was later released as part of the official federal grand jury record under Title 18 of the United States Code. 45 minutes after lockdown executed, tactical military police teams breached facility side entry doors using thermal cutting torches to slice through compromised locks. Armed officers secured the building floor by floor, zip-tying remaining personnel until identities could be established under federal defense protocols. Preston was brought into the central war room conference space in handcuffs, his suit disheveled, shouting demands to speak with executive management. The main conference display monitor flickered to life. The Department of Defense seal was replaced by a high-definition video feed featuring General Montgomery, 4-star Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. General Montgomery was a stern commander who rarely smiled. He was not smiling now, Preston, sweating profusely while held between 2 armed military police officers, attempted to straighten his jacket. "General," Preston stammered nervously. "Be quiet," General Montgomery cut short. His voice was low, flat, and carried immovable authority. Preston's mouth snapped shut instantly. "Mr. Preston," General Montgomery continued, reading from an encrypted federal file. At 09:14 hours on Friday, your administrative credentials were deployed to execute a manual override on a Level 5 security quarantine involving flight navigation hardware intended for presidential transport logistics. I expedited a delayed component shipment, Preston blurted out desperately. It was a strategic cost optimization. The vendor you authorized, General Montgomery interrupted coldly, is a foreign entity front company operated by foreign intelligence services. You attempted to integrate compromised tracking microchips into Air Force One supply streams. Do you comprehend the legal definition of treason and federal security endangerment under Title 18 of the United States Code? Preston went pale, knees shaking. Treason? No, you deliberately deleted Aegis Zero defensive validation scripts, General Montgomery stated. Why? It was dinosaur code, Preston cried out, his voice cracking with panic. It was creating legacy drag and delaying project delivery metrics. General Montgomery stared at Preston through the screen with terrifying intensity. That dinosaur code was engineered by our chief systems architect, Nathan Cole, under strict Department of Defense compliance frameworks. You terminated the only technical architect authorized to manage defense infrastructure, breaching corporate fiduciary duty and federal acquisition law, and in doing so, you triggered an automated national defense fail-safe designed specifically to isolate corporate incompetence and espionage. General Montgomery looked off-camera toward an attending officer. Take Mr. Preston into federal custody immediately under Section 1030 of Title 18 for computer fraud, forgery of digital credentials, unauthorized modification of defense systems, and breach of federal security regulations. Wait! Preston screamed as military police lifted him off his feet. I can fix the code! You will never touch a computer keyboard again for the rest of your natural life, Mr. Preston. General Montgomery stated calmly. The video feed shifted focus as General Montgomery addressed his communications officer. Contact Nathan Cole immediately. At 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, my home telephone rang. Nathan Cole speaking, I answered calmly. Nathan, this is Colonel Ramsey calling on behalf of General Montgomery, a sharp military voice said. We have a severe infrastructure containment event at the Colorado Logistics Facility. I am aware of the event, Colonel, I replied, taking a sip of tea. It appears the Aegis Zero fail-safe performed its design function perfectly. The facility is locked down under maximum defense encryption, Colonel Ramsey explained. Encryption keys rotated automatically when the breach executed. We require your physical presence to restore operational status for presidential transport fleets. That presents a structural challenge, Colonel, I said calmly. As of Friday morning, my corporate position was sunsetted by management and administrative access was revoked. Nathan, Colonel Ramsey sighed over the line. Preston is currently in federal custody facing multiple felony counts under Title 18 of the United States Code. His corporate firm's defense contract has been terminated for cause effective immediately. I paused deliberately. I require a direct prime contract with the Department of Defense, Colonel. 0 civilian corporate middle managers, 0 agile directors, absolute authority over security architecture, and full federal compliance indemnification signed directly by General Montgomery before I step foot back inside that building. Consider it executed, Colonel Ramsey responded without hesitation. A military transport vehicle is outside your residence right now. Tell the driver to wait 15 minutes, Colonel, I said. I am finishing my dinner. I returned to the facility on Tuesday morning. Corporate Agile Velocity banners hung across the entrance were gone, replaced by official flags of the United States Air Force and Defense Logistics Agency. I walked into the building escorted by 2 respectful military officers. The atmosphere inside was focused and quiet. Technicians sat at workstations working diligently. Nora was waiting outside my old server office. When she saw me, a massive wave of relief washed over her face. Welcome back, Chief Architect, she said softly. It is good to be back, Nora, I replied. I entered the primary server vault, sat down at the master bare metal terminal, and inserted my personal hardware security key. The screen displayed Aegis Zero Defense System, status, awaiting master architect verification. I typed my credentials, user Nathan Cole. Cryptographic key verified system prompt. Restore defense infrastructure from secure backup? Why nah? I pressed Y and hit enter. Across the facility, deep red emergency strobes ceased flashing. Heavy steel blast shutters groaned as they lifted smoothly into ceiling compartments, allowing bright Colorado sunlight to flood back into the building. Ventilation fans returned to standard whisper quiet. Operation and monitor displays flashed back to familiar green diagnostic dashboards. Aegis Zero was fully restored, wrapping silent protection around the defense supply chain once again. Systems are fully operational across all defense sectors, Colonel, I announced to Colonel Ramsey, who stood nearby. Outstanding work, Director Cole, Colonel Ramsey said, shaking my hand firmly. I sat back in my old non-ergonomic office chair. I pulled up a bare metal terminal window and typed a final configuration command. Update system policy. Revoke all executive override access. Set administrative permissions. Director Cole sole authority. Execute hard lock. I pressed enter. The terminal responded with a quiet prompt. Policy enforced. Console locked. Real power in system architecture never requires noisy corporate titles or arrogant presentations. True authority exists in the quiet, absolute strength of unyielding technical expertise that waits patiently for incompetence to defeat itself.